Hello, my name is Doug Goodkin, and you are listening to the ABCs of Education.
A, you're adorable. B, you're so beautiful. C, you're a cutie full of charm.
Today's episode is part 2 of A is for Arts and is titled Arts and Academics.
You're a friend in my arms. G, you look good to me. H, you're so happy.
One of the common strategies used to exclude the arts in schools is the excuse that there's not enough time if school is to achieve rigorous academic success. But by pitting the arts and academics against each other, they insult both of them. They diminish what each could be if properly understood. And the problem comes from both sides because neither the artists nor the academics understand that these two fields of study are actually both sides of the same coin. If only we had enough academic rigor to know history, we would discover that the very word academics comes from one of the first documented schools in Western history, Plato's Academia, founded in Athens, Greece in 387 BC. There, scholars were trained in dialectics, natural sciences, mathematics, geometry, astronomy, and music. By medieval times, some 1,500 years later, these educational roots flowered into the 7 liberal arts that were divided into the trivium, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music. You can feel the roots of the 3 R's, reading and writing, as part of the trivium, and the quadrivium was the arithmetic side, but notice arithmetic was paired with geometry, astronomy, and music. When the U.S. public schools first took root in Boston in the 1840s, Lowell Mason made sure that music was part of it. And in my own 1950s public school education, I had both music and art twice a week. That's a pretty convincing case that for over 2,000 years, arts in schools were a necessary part of the academic curriculum. Here's what I wrote in that first chapter of my ABC book. Today, arts and academics are often pitted against one another as if school were a choice between rigorous critical thought and fanciful finger painting. But Plato knew better. In his school, the arts helped shape the moral and feeling life through the discipline of craft and the ability to evoke emotion. And meanwhile, the sciences built a mind capable of doubting, questioning, analyzing, and drawing conclusions. The arts sought to reflect the beautiful symmetries and harmonies of the world through the making of things, the sciences to understand and explain the mysteries of the cosmos through the making of ideas. The line between the doing of art and the thinking of science was, and is, thin. Art always requires thinking, and science demands much doing. For Plato, learning was always tied to character, moral rectitude, and a kind of cosmic understanding that needed both art and science to be fully realized. How far our notions of academics have fallen. Now, mere information connected only to itself and judged by strange tests created by people far away from children has become the new standard of, quote, quality education. Classical academics, by contrast, were about ways of thinking, about comparing, contrasting, concluding, but always in connection to character and community. If we're going to use the word academics in our political rhetoric, we should be clear about what it originally and ultimately means. The arts are academics, not only because Plato says so, but because every note sung and played well, every brushstroke beautifully executed, every Shakespeare line delivered with conviction requires a thorough body of knowledge to back it up and move it forward. For a subject to qualify as academic, it must possess a tangible base of information accessible to systematic procedures, investigations, and development. It must be receptive to formal instruction. It must have its own vocabulary and its own peculiar concepts, relationships, and techniques. And thus, the arts, all of them, qualify for inclusion in the academic family. Let anyone who doubts this discuss kinesiology with a dancer, double fugues with a composer, or symmetry with a sculptor. Let me talk about this a little more from my home territory perspective of music education. And I promise that this whole series is not just about the arts. It's not just about music education by any means. It's about the whole spectrum of the human psyche and the human mind and heart and body. But it is a good idea for me to talk from my area of expertise at the beginning, at least. So in a typical school, every school subject offers something that is necessary to a child's development. Reading and writing at its height offers the full range of stories and fables and poetry that help shape, reflect, and express the human condition. Math feeds the pattern-making perception of the brain that allows us to both balance our checkbooks and feed our analytic intellect. Science helps to explain our physical universe and create the technologies that make our lives more comfortable than the kings of old. History helps us to understand that where we come from has everything to do with where we are and everything to do with where we might go. Foreign language study gives us literally a second language with which to express ourselves and think about things and connect with people from the other parts of the world at the same time. Physical education helps us build strong, eloquent, and expressive bodies, and sports offer both discipline and teamwork. Art makes our lives vibrant with vivid colors and beautiful shapes, and allows us to express the invisible worlds of the imaginations. Mostly schools have recognized the above and built their curriculums accordingly. But what specifically can music do? And my answer is all of the above and yet more. Music, well considered and well taught, supports each and every one of the above curriculums, both visibly and invisibly giving practice and insight into each from another point of view while adding color and depth. What is song but sung poetry? What is a symphony or a jazz solo but a compelling story with an enticing beginning and a connected and unfolding middle and a satisfying end, all told in another language? And since every single aspect of music is described mathematically, from 4/4 time to 4/40 tuning to the 5/7 flat 5 chord to the octave interval and yet more, music is math come alive in sound. Music won't build us a computer, but many of the people that did were musicians, and the science of acoustics is essential to instrument building. We're not likely to remember the dates on those old history tests, but we will remember the stories told in songs like The Erie Canal, or Sweet Betsy from Pike, or Follow the Drinking Gourd, hundreds more. If you want to learn a foreign language, better to begin with the rhymes and songs than Berlit's book teaching you how to ask for a new transmission. When music classes include dance, as they should, the body is well exercised, and the coordination of music making requires both fine and large motor movement that rivals any athletic endeavor. The discipline and teamwork that music requires exactly parallels what sports requires, with the added perk that there's no losing team after the concert. The colorful designs and shapes of visual arts are given new voices in compositions and choreographies with an equal celebration of the imagination. Not only does music support and enlarge every other subject, but, put this in bold, it is the only subject that contains all of the others. So back in the time when the Mozart effect was a popular idea, one that I agree with partially, but not wholly, that music makes us smarter. You can see why it might, with all these connections that are necessary to be successful in music. But even if it did make us smarter in math and language and kinesthetic intelligence, and there is ample evidence that at least it helps, it doesn't exist just to make us smarter. It deserves to be considered for its own gifts, for what it offers that nothing else does in quite the same way. But before we get to that, I'm going to read a little bit more from my chapter about how the arts are academic, but academics can also be artful. Imagine you are a visitor touring the school where I teach. You might drop into a class where some students are making musical instruments. In the next room, they're rehearsing a play. In yet another class, they're inventing their own geographical region and drawing a fanciful map. Down the way, some children are memorizing and reciting the bones of the body, while others are discussing the enslavement of human beings. In yet another classroom, kids are graphing symmetrical and asymmetrical patterns, while down the hall, others are reciting a poem, discussing its meaning, and analyzing its structure. Now, reading this description, you might imagine that this is a school that values both art and academics, a place that includes music, art, and drama in its curriculum, as well as the conventional science, history, language arts, and math. But what might come as a surprise is that the children making musical instruments are in science class studying acoustics. The ones rehearsing the play are in Spanish class. The imaginative cartographers are studying geography. The children reciting bones are in art class, and the kids discussing slavery, graphing patterns, and analyzing poetry are all in different music classes. This indeed is a school that values the so-called arts and academics, but it's also a school that does not draw a fixed line between them, for here the arts are academic and academics are artful. The business of school is understanding, and a deep understanding requires an artful approach. To truly understand how things work, procedures, operations, ideas, systems, the student must stand under them, must go below the surface and examine them from all angles. And this is best served by an artistic approach, not only ingesting and analyzing and reflecting on information, but also working with the hand and opening the heart and exercising the intuition and awakening the imagination and playfully exploring and diligently working to create something new from all the knowledge one is learning. The students who succeed in school are those who perceive pattern, who can see the pattern relationships in math, who can hear the pattern sounds and rhythms and cadences of language, who can make connections with the patterns of history, who notice the pattern themes in stories. Someone has been eating my porridge. Someone has been eating my porridge. Somebody's been eating my porridge, and she ate it all up. One of the best ways to perceive and understand patterns is to make patterns. So in music, the skilled composer or master improviser is considered to be at the higher level than the music theorist or performer, because the constant invention of musical patterns forges the deepest understanding of how they work. And that's why creativity is not a frill to the side of learning facts and skills, but it's an essential strategy for developing a true understanding of every subject. In short, creativity is the highest level of cognition. By limiting creativity to traditional arts and limiting critical thought and analysis to traditional academics, we are harming both. Without a foundation of conceptual thinking, the arts are impotent to express themselves fully. Without a foundation of creative energy, academics are flat and one-dimensional. Those who see the outer world with two good eyes and the inner world with a third eye have the best chance of fully understanding whatever comes their way. The move to restore academics to its original purpose, to develop the whole human being through the vehicles of art, language, and science, begins by refusing to reduce arts and academics to definitions that exclude and compete. When every school subject is experienced imaginatively, intuitively, intellectually, as well as aesthetically and kinesthetically and emotionally, we will have come closer to nourishing the immense hunger of children to know and love their world. And that's how I end that first chapter, A is for Arts. So arts teachers out there, next time you have to advocate, use the Plato example of arts and academics as being of one piece, and remind people of our original purpose, and again, our further purpose, our future purpose, our present purpose, to really reach the whole child, all aspects of the human being, and to see how all those things connect and interweave and support and enhance each other, and give a great color and vibrancy to the experience that kids are having, so that school becomes a joyful place, something to look forward to, something to revel in, something where children are creating as well as analyzing, and where they're actively doing as well as reflectively thinking. That's it. Stay tuned for B.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right.
All right.
Once more.
Once more.